everyone, and welcome back to Vegans, Veggies, and Vibes. My name's Amarais, and today we are making lentil Dahl and Naan. So the first thing we want to do is to heat up a tablespoon or two of oil in our pan over medium heat. And we're going to add some garlic cloves, a chopped up jalapeno, and our ginger to the pan. And we're gonna let that sweat for just a few minutes. So the purpose of this is to soften everything and wake up the spices before we add everything else in. I heated up my oil a little too much. As you can see, it's spitting quite a bit. And this is because everything I just put in is to some degree wet. And so the oil is reacting and spitting. But we're just gonna toast these up for a couple of minutes. If you want your dal to be spicier, you can leave the seeds in your jalapeno. If you want it to be more mild, you can take all of your seeds out. If it's a really fresh jalapeno, sometimes even seeds out is pretty hot, depending on what your tolerance is. I usually leave seeds in. For mine, I like a nice medium. I think it really wakes up this dish. So now that our garlic is starting to look a little bit golden brown, we're going to add our sweet potatoes, our lentils, and our curry powder. And we're gonna mix this all in so that everything is coated in our spices. And kind of toast up the curry powder as well. If you look at my sweet potatoes, I have them cut up into smaller cubes. The reason for this is I don't want them to take too long to cook along with my lentils. Dal is one of those foods where you can let it cook until it's absolute mush, and that's actually acceptable. But if you want there to still be a little bite in your food, I would recommend definitely cutting it smaller so it doesn't have to cook as long. All right, now that that has toasted for a little bit, we're going to add our coconut milk. We're using canned coconut milk because we really want the fat from the coconut milk in this dish. Don't worry if your spices were sticking to the bottom of your pan. The addition of all of this extra liquid and fat will definitely help pull all of that fond up. So now we're just going to mix in our coconut milk, break up the fat that may have solidified, and scrape up our spices from the bottom of the pan. If your coconut milk doesn't harden and like the fat is runnier, that's totally fine. Some brands have like a thicker, harder fat than others for whatever reason. If you keep your coconut milk in the fridge, it will also harden up versus if it's in your pantry. I know if it's really warm outside, my coconut milk, especially my pantry, tends to be a lot looser than in the wintertime. And we're just gonna stir that all in. And then we're going to add some veggie broth. I'm using a veggie broth concentrate, so I just mix it into the water in my can of coconut milk, and that way I can also get the rest of the coconut fat out. That may look like a lot of liquid, but that is going to simmer and those lentils are gonna soak most of that up. The last thing I'm going to do is add a pinch of salt and black pepper to this. And then I'm going to bring this up to a boil and let it simmer on the stove until all of my lentils are cooked all the way through. You can salt and pepper this to your liking. You can add cayenne pepper or more jalapenos if it's not hot enough. You can add more curry powder if you feel like there's not enough flavor. It's a very easy dish to play with. Now that our dal has come to a full boil, I'm going to cover this and turn it down to low and allow it just to very lightly simmer and steam those lentils. While your lentils are cooking, we can go ahead and start on our naan. The first thing we're going to do is get some flour. We're going to add all of our dry ingredients, so a pinch of salt, a pinch of baking powder, and if you'd like to season it, you can add your seasonings now. A really common one that I really enjoy is garlic, so I'm gonna add some garlic powder to my naan, and we're just gonna give that a quick mix so we know that it's all incorporated. And then we're going to leave a well in the center, and we're going to start adding coconut milk. Now, this is different coconut milk than what comes in the can. We are using coconut milk from a carton, and the reason that we're making that distinction is because we don't need all of that extra fat in our naan. We're using carton coconut milk just as a milk replacement since this is vegan. If you're not vegan, you can use just regular cow milk. You could use almond milk for this. It really doesn't matter. Naan bread is very, very easy to make. It doesn't need like a specific measurement. So now that it's starting to come together, I'm gonna pour it out onto my work surface. Oops, still a little down in there. And I'm gonna start kneading that into a ball of dough. At this stage, if you notice it's too wet, you can add more flour. If it's way too dry, you can sprinkle on a little bit of coconut milk. But all we're doing is trying to get this into a cohesive ball. And then we're going to sit and knead this for at least 5 minutes. The reason we're doing this is to help form all of the gluten in the dough. The more we work it, the tougher our dough is going to get. You can see now that it's kind of bumpy looking, and we want this to be very elastic and very smooth. When you press on it, it's not really elastic, it'll break. So we're trying to build up all of that gluten to make it a more malleable dough. For anyone who's never kneaded dough before, there's lots of different methods you can use. The method I use is a pretty common one. Basically, you take the heel of your hand and you press into the dough, kind of pull it out, turn it, and kind of fold it. So you're always kind of folding it in on itself. And this is just pulling all of those glutens to help us form all those strands. As you're kneading, you'll start to notice that it's changing. It's getting a lot softer to the touch. It's getting more elasticy than it was before. Keep kneading. Make sure you're doing this for at least 5 minutes. All right, I'm about done kneading, and as you can see, this dough is getting really soft, really supple, and it's getting much more elastic than it was before. See how far I can pull that? The first time I tried to pull it, it would have just broken. All right, now that I'm done kneading, I'm just gonna place a bowl over it and let that rest for 10 minutes while I check on my lentils and do a little cleanup. So now that I've finished rolling out my naan, I'm just gonna place it in the pan. I have oil in this pan heated up over medium heat, and our goal is to see some nice bubbles forming. If you have your pan preheated, it shouldn't take long to heat, and you should see nice big bubbles forming all around. If you're using a nonstick pan, you don't need to add oil. If you don't preheat your oil, it won't be hot enough for these initial bubbles to form. And once you start to see these outsides turn dark, You can flip it over. And these do not take very long to cook, especially if you roll them out thin. As you can see here, those are getting very dark very fast. If you're afraid of frying on a heat that high, and like I said, we're only on medium, you can also do it on low. I don't recommend this because I don't feel like you get the correct texture and the right bubbles, but you don't need to do it on a full medium if you're afraid of that. That's more of the color we're looking for. So I'm just gonna take him out and do the next one. All right, now that our lentils are nice and softened, we're going to add a splash of lime juice. Adding lime juice is actually a really important step to dal and also most curries. The reason for this is because this dish doesn't have an acid in it without that lime juice. And without an acid, the flavor is out of balance. What an acid does is break up the meaty and really heavy flavors and lighten it, but also brighten it. So without lime juice, this would be a very heavy, slightly spicy meal. But with the lime juice, it is now really well balanced. If you like cilantro, garnish this with cilantro and eat with your naan. We're all done. I'll see you guys next time.